Welcome to the full in-depth walkthrough of building Mandalore. In this video, we are going to be giving you all of the details of this entire mock, from the buildings, how we made them, the battle, all of the minifigures that we used, the vehicles, and everything you could possibly want to know. Okay, so let's start with a general overview of the build. In the center here, we have the throne room where you have the main battle between Maul and Ahsoka. And then moving over to the side, we have a courtyard that we've built. We're going to go into more detail on all of these things, but up here we have a crashed gauntlet starfighter. Down front, we have the main battle, and this is where we have most of the minifigures, most of the action that's going on. Moving over to the left-hand side of the mock, we have the sewer entrance that goes all the way down where Vaughn dies. And then over towards the back of the build, we have all of these tall Mandalorian buildings with a lot of action going on. So the first thing that we're going to cover here is all of the vehicles that are used in the build, and I'm actually going to hand the mic over to Jacco. He's going to walk you guys through that.
First, we're going to be starting with the Mandalorian Gauntlet Fighter. This is the Lego set, but we just added some small battle damage. So we did a leaky engine, a crashed cockpit, and we also had some flames on the wing where he got shot down. Next, in the middle of the mock, we have this incredible dropship. This is a model from CrossBrickBuilds built by Forged in Lego, and it actually works with every single ATTE variant, and it's awesome. Then over in the middle of the mock, we just have the normal Lego ATTE. It's aiming up and having a pretty cool action scene. And on the left here, we have the M5 gunship. This is also a really cool build, which is dropping off some 332nd clone troopers.
So with the vehicles covered, we're going to go into detail with each section of the mock, and the first section I want to focus on is the throne room. This is the centerpiece right in the middle here, and we placed it here because we want to be able to focus on the battle between Maul and Ahsoka. This is an iconic scene from the Clone Wars, and so we've got them right in the middle fighting each other, and then around the outside of the throne room, we've got a couple of Mandalorians stationed, taking part in the battle down below. And then we also have a couple of clone troopers. So here we have a Clone Army Customs Captain Rex. He actually doesn't have this pattern on his helmet in the TV show, but they made their own version to match the rest of the 332nd. And he's blasting a Mandalorian right off of the balcony here. Moving into the interior of the throne room, we used pieces from the Lego set to create the throne. And then there's also Pre Vizsla's helmet in the corner. And then right behind the throne room, we've added the Easter egg of Palpatine versus Savage Opress. So right next to the throne room, we have a courtyard. You can see these kinds of color schemes used on Mandalore. We actually looked at quite a few reference photos to try and match the same vibe. But we've got a blue milk vending machine in the back corner with a clone trooper getting his blue milk, which we thought would be a fun little Easter egg to include. Obviously, we're not going full canon with this build, but coming forward, we've got some plant designs and everything, and then just various battles going on between clone troopers and Mandalorians in hand-to-hand combat, fighting over blasters. We got this guy falling over the railing in the front, and then a couple of crates for detail. There's also a custom 332nd Clone Commando that is fighting this Super Commando here. This is from Clone Army Customs. And the last thing on this level is a couple of wall details. We have some vents below the throne room balcony, and then on the right-hand side here, we've got a couple of windows with some light pouring through them. Just above that section, we have a crashed Mandalorian Gauntlet Fighter. This thing is going straight through the wall here, and this is the Lego set that was modified by Jacco. We've got a broken windshield here built out of trans-clear pieces with a Death Watch Mandalorian falling out of the cockpit. And then on the back of the ship, there is some leaking engine fuel. We also installed some lights here with some flicker effects to kind of give some nice details. And then you've got another guy who's running away from the crash site to escape. Moving down to the main battle area here, we have some fun small details toward the back of the mock. So we've got Jesse, who has captured Maul in his Mandalorian prison crate thing. I don't know what it's called. And then we also have a few Tiger Shark clone troopers. These are from Clone Army Customs. I don't believe that they're actually canon, but we really like their designs, so we decided to include them here just for fun. Moving forward into the action sequence of the battle, we have the dropship with ATTE, and then we have a bunch of 332nd clone troopers that are rushing into battle, along with some Mandalorian loyalists. These guys are being headed up by an ATTE, and then toward the front of the battle, we have Captain Rex leading the charge with Bo-Katan, a couple of her loyalists, and some more 332nd clones. Moving on to the Mandalorians on their side of the battle, we have Gar Saxon, who is leading the charge with a couple of super commandos coming back to reinforce him. And then on the backside of the throne room here, we have a 332nd clone trooper who has found his way into wielding the Darksaber. So this Mandalorian is pledging his allegiance to him. Toward the backside of the build here, we have some very large structures where we've staged a number of battles between super commandos and Death Watch and a few loyalists. So we have them in hand-to-hand combat, blaster combat. There is also a bridge area down towards the middle where we have some more Mandalorians fighting each other. This area we thought would just be really great for having some combat and Mandalorians flying all over the place to show some action sequences. Coming down from the tallest building, there's a balcony on the roof of the second building where there's a few airborne troopers and Mandalorians stationed at the top. Moving down from the second building, we have a gunship that's landed on this platform and a few 332nd troopers being deployed with Captain Vaughn standing on the platform getting ready to go down to the Mandalorian sewers. Okay, so now that we've given you a bit of a closer look at things, I want to talk about why we designed the mock the way we did, because this is obviously not the canon layout for Mandalore. We've had a certain limitation with space that we can work with here, and obviously we're not building a full minifigure scale Mandalore. So we had to decide where to place certain buildings and elements to try and make it so you could actually see everything that's going on and be able to understand where things are from the show and kind of piece those things together. So in the center here, we have the throne room. We felt that this is probably the most important and iconic scene from season 7 of the Clone Wars. So we decided to place that front and center. It's also the most technical building that we made, and we'll get into all of those details in a little bit here. And then moving around to the back side, we wanted to have some interest going on with a crashed fighter. This is something that is new for all of us. And we wanted to make sure that we were including not just flying ships over the mock, but some more battle and interest in detail. So this is something that we feel you could have seen in the Battle of Mandalore or the Siege of Mandalore, but it's not actually a canon thing that would have happened. And next to that, we have the courtyard, which is set a little bit lower down. We kind of wanted to have levels to things so that you could see everything at once for the most part when looking at this build. But this courtyard has some nice pops of color and adds a little bit of visual interest to things. And then we have the main road that sort of wraps around the front. Of course, with large Star Wars mocks, you want to include a battle, usually, especially for Clone Wars builds. And so the battle had to be front and center. I think it just made the most sense for this to be at the lowest point of the mock. Something that you see immediately and you can focus on. And then moving towards the back, we have these very large buildings. On Mandalore, there are all of these large, blocky, square structures with trans blue colors on them. And so we wanted to represent that with all of these panel designs that we've done. They kind of look like this large singular structure here with the techniques that we've decided to use. But I think it still encapsulates the general design language of Mandalore. And we thought it would be a lot of fun to try and make these as tall as we possibly could. So you can see the one on the back left almost goes right up to the ceiling, which I think is pretty cool. This is the largest structure that I've ever built. And then in the center, we have this large building that's right behind the throne room. We didn't want there to just be empty space behind the throne room, so this kind of just acts as a backdrop for that for the most part. But it is built a little bit differently from the other buildings, and we'll get into that in just a second here. But on the top, you can see that there are a few Mandalorians having a bit of a skirmish. And it's a pretty plain building for the most part as to not detract from the throne room's detail. But that's the main purpose for it. There's just to kind of act as this background structure. And then lastly, on the left over here, there are some scenes that are pretty recognizable from the TV show, especially with Captain Vaughn there going down into the Mandalorian sewers. This is something that we thought would be fun to include to just show that this goes down to the depths of Mandalore. We would have liked to have included the actual Mandalorian sewers in this build, but I think it would have added on to our timeline too much, and we were already pretty restricted with all of the things we were trying to accomplish here. So next I want to talk about some of the building techniques that we used to actually accomplish what you see in front of you here. And so I'm going to walk around the back side to just give you guys a little bit more detail on how all of these buildings are constructed. So because this is a mock challenge and we've had a limited amount of time to complete things, which is just a week, we had to come up with an efficient way to make large buildings. And so after, I think the first day or two, maybe it was even on the first day, we realized that we were going to need a significant amount of filler. And so we decided to pick up a bunch of Duplo, and this actually ended up working out super well. It's obviously not creating the most dynamic structure or anything like that, but we're going for size here to try and see just how much we can accomplish in a week. And I think this does a pretty good job. But basically what we've got going on here is we have this Duplo structure, which has these large Duplo pillars that transition into 2x4 bricks and then into plates. And we've created pillars here, and then there's snot bricks on the other side. And those snot bricks are connecting into 16 by 16 Technic brick plates. These Technic brick plates are actually super handy because you can pin them together using Technic pins through these holes, and you can basically create one giant panel to stick to the structure. This helps with adding stability. It means that it can actually stand up on end, and then you've got a snot space to work with on the other side. So you have this entire surface where you can just use tiles, plates, slopes, whatever else you want to do to add detail. And it makes it much easier than just trying to brick build something. Because if you were to brick build all of this, it would take many, many hours, whereas just doing snot detail is way quicker.
Next, we're going to be taking a look at the Mandalorian throne room. This throne room utilizes a lot of snot techniques, mainly for the windows. This is to give these cool designs. One of the downsides of this technique I used is the anti-studs. They really often show, and there's no real good way to fix it that I know of, especially when being limited to such a short time frame. One of the cool things for the roof was we attached some hinge plates to make these roofs actually curve into place, along with using these panel pieces to make a nice flush angle. For the floor design, we also decided to include some simple yet effective patterns, also with some cool trans yellow accent pieces to give it a bit more glow. For the chandeliers, I decided to use a snot brick with studs on all sides to get a really cool effect. This allowed me to put slopes on every single angle, giving this cool round cone design. And I wish the light would have been a bit more potent, but I think I'm really happy with it. One of the big issues we ran into was that the throne room was built too small for the building it's on top of. So to fix this, we added these walkways wrapping all the way around. This actually turned out to be a really good spot for posing minifigures. And also I feel like it makes a lot of sense that you can overlook the balcony and the courtyard all at the same time. One of the first big decisions we made for the throne room was to not use trans clear panels. Just the part selection is so limited, and with some of these angles going on, there was going to be no good way to work these in. And also I think looking through this without glass in the middle actually allows you to see the figures and details much better. So I'm very happy with how that turned out. The first building we started on was the courtyard. We were kind of too enthusiastic going into this, so we decided to put an angled wall. We couldn't really figure this out, so we made a panel piece that just slid into place using some of these triangle pieces and panel pieces to cover off the angles. It looks really good, but we spent a lot of time on this. Because of the difficult angle of this first wall, we thought the roof needed to be entirely snot, and originally we didn't have these connected, but we actually ended up doing that because there was a lot of panel gaps. We really had to do some weird techniques to fix some of these gaps. We were using brackets in here. We have a random tile covering a hole that we had. Honestly, this was probably too complex for the amount of time we spent on it, because we really only spent 12 hours on this building, and we probably should have just simplified it a bit more. So above the courtyard again is the Mandalorian gauntlet crash. This was a cool area to experiment with some new techniques. I really wanted the gauntlet to be crashed through the wall, because I thought sitting against it would just look unnatural. So I used a variety of different slopes to make a hole so the wings could fit in. This took some tinkering, as you might have been able to see on the time lapse, but I think it turned out great. Above was a big gray wall, and we needed to add some sort of detail. On these brick areas, it's way harder to add detail than on the Technic brick plates, so we snot attached some of these big ridges and try to add some sort of ventilation or ingot details. So where the Mandalorian Gauntlet Fighter crashed, I really want to make some sort of skid area, so I wanted to have some black as burn marks, some embers, and some trans colors with the flickering lights. I think this looks like an active crash scene, along with the broken cockpit and the engine leaking. I think this just looks like a completely destroyed gauntlet fighter, which is the goal.
So the next area I want to talk about here is this main road section. We built this pretty straightforward. It's just using a snot building technique where we take bricks, lay them on their sides, and attach them together. We created these in paneled sections. You can see by these dividing lines here. And this was to make it easy so we could just pull out panels if we needed to do work underneath the snot area, or if we wanted to change things up and add in snot bricks to put minifigures in. So you can see there's a gap under there. You can just kind of lift a section up and then access whatever you need to. And then once you're done, stick that right back in place and you're good to go. Obviously, using this technique is very parts intensive. We were debating on whether to tile or to do this snot built brick section. Tiling would have used way too many tiles, and I'm actually kind of low on dark bluish gray tiles. I know it doesn't look like it because this build is huge, but my ratio is way off between light bluish gray and dark bluish gray. So doing this snot built technique was the most economical way to go for this build. It's the first time that I've tried doing this, and I think it's definitely a technique I'll use again in the future. So as I talked about before with the Duplo structures behind the Technic brick plates, on this side, you can kind of see that these are built-in sections. Some of them were built-in sections that might have been like 3 tall or 2 tall, maybe 3 wide, whatever. We wanted to do some larger panels like the one on the top right that you're seeing now. But basically with all of these, we sort of just built them randomly. We had some friends helping us out with this, and a number of people got to contribute to all of these various panel designs, which was super helpful. But it is a much quicker way of doing things than just doing brick built sections. This whole building section here took multiple hours to finish. Jacco spent a lot of time on that, and it probably could have been accomplished much quicker if we had just gone with this snot built technique, because it's just way faster to tile some things off and slap a panel on a wall than to place hundreds and hundreds of bricks. For the sewer entrance down here, we used some hinge bricks to kind of get this angle here so we could round out the wall. This is a technique that we saw David from Solid Brick Studios use in his large Mandalore mock. And then we have this elevator shaft that leads down to the bottom of the pit. So as you can see, we used quite a bit of lighting in this build. It's something that I really like to try and do when working on a large scale mock. We've done a couple of things. Most of them are pretty simple, but I think it really adds to the overall visual appeal of the build. So starting with the windows, we used bricks in front. These are trans blue bricks, and this is pretty much the same technique for all of the windows that are lit up. And then there is a gap behind those where we place the light. And then behind that, there's a panel or bricks to stop you from seeing all of the filler brick that is behind those windows. In the throne room here, we used some light up lightsabers from Light My Bricks, and then we also added some orange lights into the chandeliers. Moving on to the Mandalorian Starfighter in the back right, we added some flickering lights. I really like this effect. I think that it looks like fire, especially when you have the lights turned off and things dimmed down. We also used this same thing over on an explosion on the left-hand side that was built by Jacco. This is a large explosion that's happening with just a single LED on the inside, and it's the same flicker effect as the Mandalorian Starfighter on the right. I hope you guys enjoyed a little bit more of an in-depth review of this build. If this is something you'd like to see more in the future with other builds that I do, let me know in the comment section down below. If you haven't watched the full build challenge video yet, you can click here to check it out right now. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and I hope you have a good one.